Hey, how are you guys, everybody? Everybody, how are you? What's up, yo? This is Sunko. Mm, I'm back, and today is Wednesday, September 29th. Tonight, I'm going to talk about Squid Game. Squid Game. Let me explain to you what Squid Game is. As a Korean myself, I'm really proud of the fact that Squid Game now has number one spot on Netflix for sure. It's not true story. It's like a drama. Um, it's a 9 episode series about a world where innocent children's game turns deadly. I mean, and now it's making another history of K content. Like I said, it's now number one spot on Netflix, and it's bloody and really violent. I don't want to spoil to you too much because mm, I don't want to spoil to you too much, and I'll just talk about basics of the show, not who lives or who dies, and oh, okay. Like story goes like this: like in that group of people are the main character, and they are so desperate. Like they've got no money, they're indebted, and they have no hope in real life. So they got nothing to lose. And in their real life, someone just walks up to them and asks them if they're willing to join the game. So they're pretty much like tricked into this game. But then they volunteer to come back. First, you're tricked into the game, and what they find out is a bloody game that they participate, and they just like go back into their real life, and they volunteer to come back because they know that it's their only chance. You know, deep down, they know it's their only chance to win the money and survive in real life, which is really sad. It's the only chance. What a tragedy, right? And like, if you win this game, you win $38 million, which is really big money. And it's so far, not so far. Like story goes like this, pretty much. At the beginning, I cannot tell you the rest of it. We will have to watch it. From what I think, it's well done drama, for sure, and it's bloody and full of horror. So some of you um will be scared to watch it because I already know some people around who already decided not to watch it because it's mm, uncomfortable at some points. What's surprising is that I didn't watch it yet either, and I watched news and review of this movie, and I find that it's really I'm I'm thrilled to watch this. I'm excited to watch this because now it's hitting number one on Netflix, and now already know like story like a little bit, and it's a story that got me fascinated and got me excited. So I'll be watching it for sure. And from what I know, season two will come out soon. And since I don't want to spoil, I'll just I'll have to take a cautious stance at this point. But um, yeah, everything like everything together, reality and fantasy all put together in a balanced way. And but as a Korean myself, like everything the movie reflects a lot of like true stories in real life. Like um I don't know who's watching this, but from what I think, like competition in Korea is really fierce. I mean, of course I know that competition in your own countries are all fierce too, but then the core growth of Korea lies in this competition, and competition is a core growth factor for K content as well. So, um, anyway, I mean, like Korea like achieved a lot of success in such a short period of time, because of this competition. As a Korean myself, I couldn't just be entertained by the review and or the news of this K content, because I know, like, deep down, it reflects sadness and stress, like all combined. But then, in some way, it could be entertaining. Yeah. So I had a mixed feeling. Hmm. It's sad, but it's entertaining. Yeah. Anyway, I'll just leave it at this point. Um, it's what I think, but I'll watch it and then I'll do review one more time. Of course, at that time I'll have to take a cautious stance as well, because I don't want to spoil. Hmm. All right. Now from now on, I'll read the book. All right. Last time, hmm, I was reading The Mysterious Island, and the story continues. Okay. In the meantime, examine the coast with great attention. Uh, Stretched out below them was the sandy shore, bounded on the right of the river's mouth by lines of breakers. The rocks which were visible appeared like amphibious monsters reposing in the surf. Beyond the reef, the sea sparkled beneath the sun's rays. To the south, a sharp point closed the horizon, and it could not be seen if the land was prolonged in that direction, or if it ran southeast and southwest, which would have made this coast a very long peninsula. At the northern extremity of the bay, the outline of the shore was continued to a great distance in a wider curve. There the shore was low, flat, without cliffs, and with great banks of sand, which the tide left uncovered. Pencroft and Herbert then returned towards the west. Their attention was first arrested by the snow-topped mountain, which rose at a distance of 6 or 7 miles. From its first declivities to within 2 miles of the coast were spread vast masses of wood, relieved by large green patches caused by the presence of evergreen trees. Then from the edge of this forest to the shore extended a plain, scattered irregularly with groups of trees. Here and there on the left sparkled through glades the waters of the little river. They could trace its winding course back towards the spurs of the mountain, among which it seemed to spring. At the point where the sailor had left his raft of wood, it began to run between the two high granite walls, but if on the left bank the wall remained clear and abrupt, on the right bank, on the contrary, it sank gradually. The massive sides changed to isolated rocks, the rocks to stones, uh, the stones to a shingle running to the extremity of the point. Are we on an island? Murmured the sailor. At any rate, it seems to be big enough, replied the lad. An island ever so big is an island all the same, said Pencroft. But this important question could not yet be answered. A more perfect survey had to be made to settle the point. As to the land itself, island or continent, it appeared fertile. Agreeable in its aspect and varied in its productions, this is satisfactory, observed Pencroft. And in our misfortune, we must thank Providence for it. God be praised, responded Herbert, whose pious heart was full of gratitude to the author of all things. Pencroft and Herbert examined for some time the country on which they had been cast, but it was difficult to guess after so hasty an inspection what the future had in store for them. They then returned, following the southern crest of the granite platform, bordered by a long fringe of jagged rocks of the most whimsical shapes. Some hundreds of birds lived there, nestled in the holes of the stone. Herbert, jumping over the rocks, startled a whole flock of these winged creatures. "Oh!" cried he, "those are not gulls nor sea-mews. What are they then?" asked Pencroft. "Upon my word, one would say they were pigeons." "Just so, but these are wild or rock pigeons. I recognize them by the double band of black on the wing, by the white tail, and by their slight colored plumage. But if the rock pigeon is good to it, its act must be excellent, and we will soon see how many they may have left in their nests. We'll not give them time to hatch, unless it is in the shape of an omelette," replied Pencroft merrily. "But what will you make your omelette in?" asked Herbert. "In your hat?" "Well," replied the sailor, "I'm not quite conjugal enough for that. We must come down to eggs in the shell, my boy, and I will undertake to dispatch the hardest." Pencroft and Herbert attentively examined the cavities in the granite, and they really found eggs in some of the hollows. A few dozen being collected were packed in the sailor's handkerchief, and as time, when the tide would be full, was approaching, Pencroft and Herbert began to redescend towards the watercourse. When they arrived there, it was an hour after midday. The tide had already turned. They must now avail themselves of the ebb to take the wood to the mouth. Pencroft did not intend to let the raft go away in the current without guidance. Neither did he mean to embark on it himself to steer it. But a sailor is never at a loss when there is a question of cables or ropes, and Pencroft rapidly twisted a cord, a few fathoms long, made of dry creepers. This vegetable cable was fastened to the afterpart of the raft, and the sailor held it in his hand, while Herbert, pushing off the raft with a long pole, kept it in the current. This succeeded capitally. The enormous load of wood drifted down the current. The bank was very equal. There was no fear that the raft would run aground, and before 2 o'clock they arrived at the river's mouth, a few paces from the Chimneys. Okay, chapter 5. Okay. Pencroft's first care after unloading the raft was to render the cave habitable by stopping up all the holes which made it draughty. Sand, stones, twisted branches, wet clay, closed up the galleries, opened to the south once. One narrow and winding opening at the side was kept to lead out the smoke and to make the fire draw. The cave was thus divided into 3 or 4 rooms. If such dark dens, with which a donkey would scarcely have been contented, deserved the name, but they were dry, and there was space to stand upright, at least in the principal room, which occupied the center. The floor was covered with fine sand, and taking all in all, they were well pleased with it for want of a better. "Perhaps," said Herbert while he and Pencroft were working, "our companions have found this bird a place to ours." "Very likely," replied the seaman, "but as we don't know, we must work all the same. Better to have 2 strings to one's bow than no string at all." "Oh!" exclaimed Herbert, "how jolly it will be if they were to find Captain Harding and were to bring him back with them." "Yes, indeed," said Pencroft. "There was a man of the right sort." "Yes, was!" exclaimed Herbert. "Do you despair of ever seeing him again?" "God forbid," replied the sailor. Their work was soon done, and Pencroft declared himself very well satisfied. Now, said he, our friends can come back when they like. They will find a good enough shelter. Now they had only to make a fireplace and to prepare the supper, an easy task. Large flat stones were placed on the ground at the opening of the narrow passage which had been kept. This, if the smoke did not take the heat out with it, would be enough to maintain an equal temperature inside. Their wood was stowed away in one of the rooms, and the sailor laid in the fireplace some logs and brushwood. The seaman was busy with this. When Herbert asked him if he had any matches, certainly, replied Pencroft, and I may say happily, for without matches or tinder we should be in a fix. Still we might get fire, as the savages do, replied Herbert, by rubbing two bits of dry stick one against the other. All right, try, my boy, and let's see if you can do anything besides exercising your arms. Well, it's a very simple proceeding, and much used in the islands of the Pacific. I don't deny it, replied Pencroft, but the savages must know how to do it, or employ a peculiar wood. For more than once I've tried to get fire in that way, but I could never manage it. I must say I prefer matches. Uh, by the by, where are my matches? Pencroft searched in his waistcoat for the box, which was always there, for he was a confirmed smoker. He could not find it. He rummaged the pockets of his trousers, but to his horror, he could nowhere discover the box. Here's a go, said he, looking at Herbert. The box must have fallen out of my pocket and got lost. Surely, Herbert, you must have something, a tinder box, anything that can be possibly make fire. No, I haven't, Pencroft. The sailor rushed out, followed by the boy. On the sand among the rocks near the river's bank, they both searched carefully, but in vain. The box was of the box was of copper, and therefore would have been easily seen. Pencroft asked Herbert, "Didn't you throw it out of the car?" "I knew better than that," replied the sailor, "but such a small article could easily disappear in the tumbling about we have gone through. I would rather even have lost my pipe." "Confound the box, where can it be?" "Look here, the tide is going down," said Herbert. "Let's run to the place where we landed." It was scarcely probable that they would find the box, which the waves had rolled about among the pebbles at high tide, but it was as well to try. Herbert and Pencroft walked rapidly to the point where they had landed the day before, about 200 feet from the cave. They hunted there among the shingle in the clefts of the rocks, but found nothing. If the box had fallen at this place, it must have been swept away by the waves. As the sea went down, they searched every little crevice with no result. It was a grave loss in their circumstances, and for a time irreparable. Pencroft could not hide his vexation. He looked very anxious, but said not a word. Herbert tried to console him by observing that if they had found the matches, they would very likely have been wetted by the sea and useless. "No, my boy," replied the sailor, "they were in a copper box which shut very tightly." "And now what are we to do?" "We shall certainly find some way of making a fire," said Herbert. "Captain Harding or Mr. Spilett will not be without them." "Yes," replied Pencroft, "but in the meantime we're without fire, and our companions will find but a sorry repast on their return." "But said Herbert quickly, do you think it possible that they have no tinder or matches?" "I doubt it," replied the sailor, shaking his head, "for neither Nap nor Captain Harding smoke. And I believe that Mr. Spilett would rather keep his notebook than his matchbox." Herbert did not reply. The loss of the box was certainly to be regretted, but the boy was still sure of procuring fire in some way or other. Pencroft, more experienced, did not think so, although he was not a man to trouble himself about a small or great grievance. At any rate, there was only one thing to be done, to await the return of Nap and the reporter. But they must give up the feast of hot eggs, which they had meant to prepare, and a meal of raw flesh was not an agreeable prospect either for themselves or for the others. Before returning to the cave, the sailor and Herbert, in the event of fire being positively unattainable, collected some more shellfish, and then silently retraced their steps to their dwelling. Pencroft, his eyes fixed on the ground, still looked for his box. He even climbed up the left bank of the river, from its mouth to the angle where the raft had been moored. He returned to the plateau, went over it in every direction, searched among the high grass on the border of the forest, all in vain. It was 5 in the evening when he and Herbert re-entered the cave. It is useless to say that the darkest corners of the passages were ransacked before they were obliged to give it up in despair. Toward 6 o'clock, when the sun was disappearing behind the highlands of the west, Herbert, who was walking up and down on the strand, signalized the return of Nap and Split. They were returning alone. The boys heard saying the sailor had not been deceived in his forebodings. The engineer Cyrus Harding had not been found. The reporter, on his arrival, sat down on a rock without saying anything, exhausted with fatigue, dying of hunger. He had not strength to utter a word. As to Nap, his red eyes showed how he had cried, and the tears which he could not restrain told too clearly that he had lost all hope. The reporter recounted all that they had done in their attempt to recover Cyrus Harding. He and Knapp had surveyed the coast for a distance of 8 miles and consequently much beyond the place where the balloon had fallen last time but one, a fall which was followed by the disappearance of the engineer and the dog top. The shore was solitary, not a vestige of a mark, not even a pebble recently displaced, not a trace on sand, not a human footstep on all that part of the beach. It was clear that the portion of the shore had never been visited by a human being. The sea was as deserted as land, and it was there, a few hundred feet from the coast, that the engineer must have found a tomb. As Spilett ended his account, Nab jumped up, exclaiming in a voice which showed how hope struggled with him, "No, he's not dead. He can't be dead. It might happen to anyone else, but never to him. He could get out of anything." Then his strength forsaking him. "Oh, I can do no more," he murmured. "Nap," said Herbert, running to him, "we will find him. God will give him back to us. But in the meantime, you're hungry and you must eat some." So saying, he offered the poor negro a few handfuls of shellfish, which was indeed rash and insufficient food. Nap had not eaten anything for several hours, but he refused them. He could not, would not live without his master. As to Gideon Spilett, he devoured the shellfish. Then he laid himself down on the sand. At the foot of a rock, he was very weak, but calm. Herbert went up to him, and taking his hand, "Sir," said he, "we've found a shelter which will be better than laying here. Night is advancing. Come and rest. Tomorrow we'll search further." The reporter got up, and guided by the boy, uh, went towards the cave. On the way, Pencroft asked him in the most natural tone if by chance he happened to have a match or two. The reporter stopped, felt in his pockets, but finding nothing, said, "I had some, but I must have thrown them away." The seaman then put the same question to Neb and received the same answer. "Confound it!" exclaimed the sailor. The reporter heard him, and seizing his arm, "Have you no matches?" he asked. "Not one, and no fire in consequence." "Ah," cried Neb, "if my master was here, he would know what to do." The four castaways remained motionless, looking uneasily at each other. Herbert was the first to break the silence by saying, Miss Billy, you are a smoker and always have matches about you. Perhaps you would haven't looked well. Try again. A single match will be enough. Okay, it's been 24 minutes since I started reading, and 5 more minutes. Oh, all right, 5 more minutes. I have to keep pushing myself. It was a news. Hooray! Cried Parrot. It is as good as having a whole court. The reporter haunted again in the pockets of his trousers, waistcoat, and a greatcoat, and last, to Pancroft's great joy, no last to his extreme surprise, he felt a tiny piece of wood entangled in the linings of his waistcoat. He seized it with his fingers through the stuff, but he could not get it out. If this was a match and a single one, it was of great importance not to rub off the phosphorus. Will you let me try? Said the boy, and very cleverly, without breaking it, he managed to draw out the rash yet precious little bit of wood, which was of such great importance to these poor men. It was unused. Hurrah! Cried Pancras. It is as good as having a whole cargo. He took the match, and followed by his companions, entered the cave. The small piece of wood, of which so many in an inhabited country are wasted with indifference and are of no value, must here be used with the greatest caution. The sailor first made sure that it was quite dry. That done, we must have some paper, said he. Here, replied Spilett. After some hesitation, tearing a leaf out of his notebook, Pencroft took the piece of paper which the reporter held out to him, and knelt down before the fireplace. Some handfuls of grass, leaves, and dry moss were placed under the faggots and disposed in such a way that the air could easily circulate, and the dry wood would rapidly catch fire. Pencroft then twisted the piece of paper into the shape of a cone, as smokers do in a high wind, and poked it in among the moss. Taking a small rough stone, he wiped it carefully, and with a beating heart, holding his breath, he gently rubbed the match. The first attempt did not produce any effect. Pencroft had not struck hard enough. Fearing to rub off the phosphorus, "No, I can't do it," said he. "My hand trembles. The match has missed fire. I cannot, I will not." And rising, he told Herbert to take his place. Certainly the boy had never in all his life been so nervous. Prometheus, going to steal the fire from heaven, could not have been more anxious. He did not hesitate, however, but struck the match directly. A little spluttering was heard, and a tiny blue flame sprang up, making a choking smoke. Herbert quickly turned the match so as to augment the flame, and then slipped it into the paper cone, which in a few seconds caught fire, and then the moss. A minute later, the dry wood crackled and a cheerful flame, assisted by the vigorous blowing of the sailor, sprang up in the midst of the darkness. At last, cried Pencroft, 20 and a. Oh, I'm getting a bit tired tonight. Ah, I'm. How are you? Oh, tonight is really, really tough night. I mean, the story overall, it's fun. But it's getting a bit boring because it explains too much about how they make fire and stuff. All right, I'm gonna wrap up tonight, and like I said earlier in the beginning, I talked about Squid Game, which now hit number one spot on Netflix. Um, I'm really excited to watch it because all the news and fame that caught everybody's attention these days. After watching it, I'm going to review, and of course, I'm going to take a cautious stance, but for sure, I'll talk about how I think and how it reflects like true story in Korea, as Korea myself I'll tell you what I think. It's sad but entertaining. Anyway, I'm going to sum up tonight, and I'll talk to you tomorrow, and I'm gonna bring to you with more interesting story. Okay. All right. See y'all. Bye bye.